This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum and Tonya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward. Last night, I hosted my monthly women's dinner party, which interestingly enough has somehow evolved into the majority of people at this monthly party are women in insurance in different forms. And that was never by design. It just has happened. And an extraordinary young lady came early because she was leaving the office and she didn't really have time to go home first. So she showed up at my house about 40 minutes early, just wanted to talk. And I found it fascinating because this is a top producer in a third generation independent agency here in the Panhandle. And she was talking about how she felt she was so different than the other producers in the agency. She felt that the other producers in the agency just spent as much time talking to each other as they did talking to clients. And we're actually poking at her a little bit because she was staying in her office, taking care of clients, and doing what she needed to do.
I know that the idea of producers is that we have this thing in our mind that you're supposed to spend a certain amount of time prospecting new business. My question is, what is the compensation structure? What is the support infrastructure that is set up in this agency? Because I promise you, there are times during the year where are situations that cause an effect. And I would go back to how is everything actually set up before I pass judgment of should she be sitting in her office taking care of customers or should she be out in the field?
I will give you a little bit more information. Now, she is basically their community relations person as well. She is out attending every event, every party, every ball, every Christmas party. She attended something like 42 different holiday events for her agency. So yes, she is the person that is out, the face of the agency, doing this. The challenge that she was having was more internally within the agency of people almost complaining that she was working too hard and making them look bad.
Got it. That is a culture thing, unfortunate thing. Maybe we take on a little too much of worrying about others. There is that reality, though. There are the people who don't like to be showed up or set up in this environment where they know they're not doing everything they could do and this other person's making them look bad. Look, this isn't new to work. This isn't new to company culture. This is back in Little League. This is high school sports. This is college sports. This is everywhere you look. When there's competitiveness, when there's team or company culture, there are the extra effort people, and I'm guilty. I was not the biggest, most talented player. I was an effort guy. I was not 6'4". I didn't run a 6'2" 60. Not many people do, but I didn't even run a 6'4" 60. I had a teammate/roommate at Oklahoma State who was 6'4" and ran like a gazelle. He did not have bad work ethic. So I'm not insinuating this. He had good work ethic on top of that, which allowed him to be drafted by the Yankees. Okay. So he was a phenomenal athlete and he could have worked 10% as hard as I did. And he was still going to be a better athlete because at the end of the day, I was 5'8". He was 6'4". I ran a 6'8", 6'9", 60, which is barely major league average. He ran a 6'4", 60, which is top 5% of major league players. This guy was phenomenal, and he roamed center field like Willie Mays. And so at the end of the day, sometimes that reality is that there's this talent piece there. But this whole idea of the hard worker making the slackers look bad, or the hard worker making the average people look bad, and those average people getting upset about it, it's not your problem. But at the end of the day, that exists everywhere. That exists in team sports of all kinds. It exists in businesses. And I don't ever see that really going away.
For an insurance group, I did randomly ask the question, have you ever thought of starting your own agency? And from a financial perspective, I knew that this young lady wasn't there yet, but I wanted to plant the seed in her mind because getting to know her over the past 3 months, she has an entrepreneurial mindset. She is the person that we want from Gen Z starting her own agency, that she's the talent that we want to recruit. And as I was talking with her about this, you could tell that it had never crossed her mind, that no one had ever told her that she could do this. And her initial response was, how would I compete with the agency that I'm working with now? They're so big, they've been around so long. How could a new agency even begin to be competitive? And I found it fascinating because as many companies that are out there and with as much time as groups are putting into trying to tell people they can do this, that we still have people that don't even know that it's really possible.
Yeah, that's not surprising either because we still have thousands, maybe tens of thousands of exclusive/captive agents that don't really understand the independent agency system or the opportunities there. It's no fault of hers, but it's this sort of ignorance a little bit. It's that use of that word. That doesn't mean dumb. That just means unaware of information. There's a narrow mind kind of view. There's a narrow or tunnel view of the situation. And look, owning your own agency and being an agency owner isn't for everyone, but it's also awareness that exists out there that should be for everyone. And then making a choice to be a producer at an agency that gives you infrastructure, that if you're more of a pure salesperson and you have no servicing capability, or you don't want the reality of hiring people, you don't want to have staff that you have to manage, you don't want all the stuff, then people should make kind of an informed, intelligent decision that maybe I should just be a producer and stay where I'm at. That's okay.
There was an article in Insurance Journal a few weeks ago that was about talent and recruiting talent, keeping talent, what people are looking for, what we're seeing in the industry. And I did find it interesting that in 2023, that there was a lot of continued movement of talent, both in producers and service staff, but producer movement is declining where the rate of service staff movement is increasing.
I concur with the article. My take on what I see and what I see in the market when I'm talking to people is consistent with that as well. And when you look at it, if producer compensation is generally set up in a way that rewards those producers for success, their effort, usually has some type of unlimited earnings potential, all those things. If the survey sample is amongst successful independent agencies that have gotten their compensation structure for their producers correct, then I would expect those producer movements to be slower. We spent so much time over the last 2 decades fighting and worrying about producer compensation, however, that I feel like that we ignored our service staff. That is something that I feel very confident in, excited about within our organization, mainly because of some action and ideas that was taken by our managing director there in our retail operation, Tara Graham, who came from the account management side. She did not come from the producing agent side of things. So she has a heart for our service personnel. She has a heart for what we call our account managers. And she came up with what I thought was an incredible idea, and that is, we have all these salespeople on production or bonus type compensation where they can earn above their base salary, but we don't have that for our account managers. And so a couple of years, she came up with this idea of a retention bonus. Now, she put this in place a couple of years ago, right before the market started shifting. And over the last 2 years, we have had our account managers earn some fairly decent bonuses based on retention. And this retention bonus has changed the dynamic of our agency our retail operation, because it now allows, in their way and in their day-to-day impact on client relationships, it allows for the account management team to feel their worth is being paid for, their effort is being paid for beyond a static salary. And it was a wow moment for us that there is this reality that over the last couple of decades, I know our agency up until about 5 or 6 years ago, we were always in the behind the 8 ball, so to speak, with salary, with compensation, with a salary scale. It was basically somebody asking for a raise, which ironically I hated. I just did. It just bothered me. The reason it bothered me is because it exposed my lack of leadership and management to be ahead of that. And most agency owners would probably fall into that same category. Like when somebody comes into your office and asks for a raise, it means you failed as a manager. That's my interpretation. Because if that person's having to ask, then you probably haven't set up your compensation structure correctly.
A few weeks ago, I attended the Safeco Liberty Mutual State Auto Women's Conference. And one of the conversations that we had were some agents sharing stories about their retention while they were still with the agency and had been there so long. And one of the stories that one of the ladies told was appalling to me. Like, I was trying to not sit there with my chin on the table listening to what she had gone through. There had been some government involvement with the former ownership, and it was pretty ugly. And she stayed with this agency because she felt like she just really had a commitment to stay there. And it was one of those things that now the agency had been purchased by some of the employees. Some of those employees were ready to retire, and she had the opportunity to buy in. And she didn't quite feel worthy of doing it. She said, I've got the financial stability to do it. It's all set up, but I just don't think I'm worthy. And this idea that this woman basically walked through fire, went through all of this craziness, but didn't think that she deserved ownership when she had the financial investment to do it. Her husband was saying do it. Everybody was saying do it. But she just was in this place of, can I take that next step? That's the thing, is so many of our team members are so loyal that sometimes they don't have the mindset to make that shift.
Most independent agencies are family-owned type businesses. There are some that are like this situation, and maybe there's perpetuation opportunities that come up. I don't think we are developing ourselves in the industry. We get so tunnel visioned around our job because our jobs are busy, our people are worked. And look, we're guilty of, I used the 365 analogy in the past, and it comes out of the book Good to Great. I created 365. They used another term for it. We hire 3 people. We pay them like 6. We work them like 5.
And you shared this with our team members.
That's right. And I shared it with our people. And this was the beginning of how we started over a 5 or 6 year period transitioning our pay scales, mainly around the account management support accounting spectrums. Our sales, our production teams were already heading in a good direction, but this was more around the support mechanism of our organization, servicing mechanism of our organization. And this 365 concept glared at me out of the book Good to Great. And all of this happened before the Great Resignation, before the crazy compensation increases that have been going on inside our industry for a couple of years now. And we had a little more runway leading up to this that kept us stable. But once we communicated that to our people, and we try to communicate that to new employees that come in, it's okay. Like, they understood it. Like, I'm going to be busy. I'm going to work. But you know what? I'm probably going to make at or above market. I'm going to be in a culture that embraces flexibility with my family. There's going to be a lot of things here because I don't want to forget that happiness with employees goes way beyond compensation. You can pay them $1 gazillion a year, and if you treat them like crap, they're not going to stay. What happens, though, is that loyalty if it's done well, and then if even sometimes like in this case that you're citing where it's not necessarily done well, we have people inside our industry that are so loyal and committed to the agencies they work for that they almost become blinded to any opportunity.
I love the idea of the retention bonus because here's the thing. Good talent is getting harder and harder to find in our industry. It's just getting harder and harder to find, period. But giving somebody a 2 or 3% a year raise just isn't keeping up with the starting salaries that are out there. So giving people the opportunity to figure out, okay, this is how I can make more money by doing my job even better. I absolutely love that. I would be willing to bet that there are a lot of agents that are listening to this podcast that would love some specificity to what we're doing with that.
Yeah, say retention bonus. Just for clarity, I'm talking about an account manager is responsible for a book of business, and there are bonus levels applied to retaining a certain percentage of that book on a month-over-month basis. And sometimes they don't hit that bonus that month, just like sometimes salespeople don't hit their bonus or their commission that month. So it's basically aligning the work that goes into what we call here account management, which includes servicing and renewal management. So retaining the business. Part of the problem with agencies out in the marketplace is, again, we're sales organizations and we put all of our energy into sales and salespeople. And really, if you just have salespeople and you don't have great servicing people and you're not retaining the business that you have, then you're churning. Your profit sharing contingency dollars probably aren't working for you, if at all. And you're probably really not growing when you really get down to it, or you're going to hit a point where you can't grow because of the churn situation, because you're not going to be retaining business. We just haven't had the mindset as sales organizations to put emphasis on retaining business and keeping business. And look, I promise you, if your producers are also paid on renewal business, and many are, they're going to love you for putting in a retention bonus for the account management team because that's going to help them. It's not that we did this, we didn't do this, but just for you agency owners out there, it's even warranted to think about that renewal commission being a little bit less for that producer so that you can actually compensate that account manager with some retention bonus concepts. We have tables to be a little more specific. It's based on a certain percentage of retention. It's pretty high, actually. I believe our table starts at 93%. In order to even be considered, it's at 93 or 94, and then it goes up. And the higher a percentage of that month's renewals that you retain gets applied based on a 3 or 4 level retention percentage. And so 93 to 94, 94 to 95, 96 plus, and so on. You can make up your own tables, but we start in the 90s. Like, we just think the expectation is, while it's not necessarily always going to be the case, we just think that setting the bar pretty high, that attaining that bar becomes more possible than if we set that bar low. And then people generally will reach the bar you set for them if you make it humanly possible, as long as you raise that bar to an expectation level and set the expectations and you back that up. We've had a handful of comments about our starting point is too high. But at the same time, when I look at that, that generally comes when an account manager doesn't make their retention bonus that month. But they made it 3 previous months and they made it 3 months following the month they missed it. And so then when you look at it across the spectrum of the averages, it's, yeah, we're in good shape. We're not too high.
To the agency owner out there that's thinking there is no way that they can afford this, my response to that is pretty much, I don't think you can afford not to, because the challenges of finding talent out there are pretty rough. And the starting salaries that are being offered are off the charts.
I have another really good friend, not in the insurance business, that's recently retired from education, assistant superintendent of finance and operations. So this is his world. And in Texas, and probably most states, if not every state, I assume everybody's the same way, but in Texas, our teacher pay is constantly a topic of conversation. The issue with these starting salaries has happened in the education realm, and you have what's called 0-year teachers. So those are your recent college graduates. They have yet to teach. And many of your metro area school districts have raised their 0-year starting compensation into the $58,000 to $60,000 a year range. So that is a 22 to 23-year-old certified teacher in the state of Texas at 0 years, starting out at $58,000 to $60,000. In some of your rural districts, that's probably going to be $44,000 to $48,000. It's going to mirror the account management world, in my opinion. And when I looked at the education world and I overlaid it into what I would say would be the market for account managers, whether we're talking personal lines or commercial lines, there's going to be a slight difference in that. I would compare that to like your math and science teacher versus your language arts and history teachers. There's less math and science prospects, but there's a ton of opportunities. There's less commercial lines experience prospects, but there's a ton of opportunities. And so commercial lines account managers tend to be a little bit higher on the starting pay than personal lines. But that's what's happened in our industry. In order to get people into that realm, there's so many agencies that are just willing to steal other people's people instead of developing your own. We're going to develop our own because the reality of it is that is a great opportunity in the marketplace, in my opinion, versus constantly trading account management staff. But this starting salary piece is happening just like the education world because of supply and demand. And it's happening because agencies are finding themselves behind the 8 ball and they're having to panic hire because they lost someone. And back to my buddy, he made a comment on a search committee for a pastor that I was also serving on, that you don't want to get behind in any kind of compensation situation because losing that person is going to cost you way more than paying that person. Pay the account manager the market price and keep them, assuming that you love what they do, assuming you think they're a great culture fit, assuming they check all the right boxes. Do not get stuck on keeping the account management team at the right market price, because I promise you, you can't get away with that forever, because eventually somebody else is going to steal them. They're going to see a job ad. They're going to see you're paying them $42,000 a year, and they're going to see this offer over here publicized for $55,000. And they're going to say, man, $1,000 a month, that could help. And it starts to plant things in their brain like, maybe I need to check this out. And as loyal as people can be, when you help them send their kids where they need to go or pay gas or pay bills that are increasing, you can't afford, to Tonya's point, to not get ahead of this thing, to not pay them.
Looking at this study, which was done by the research team at Liberty Mutual, it was talking about that 54% of employees of independent agencies actually ranked flexible hours as a top benefit. They were looking at what people want. And it may be that remote work, flexibility, vacation days, extra vacation days, which was always like a huge thing that you want to make me do something, you give me extra vacation days and I'm going to make it happen, because that's what I love to do is travel. And it may be that you can't afford financially to compensate in the way that you think that you should, but it may be that there's something else that you can do that this particular person values, that they're going to feel like, okay, this is where I need to be because I am able to get X, Y, and Z, even if my compensation isn't over the top.
I want you to understand out there that you have to be at or within the market range. So let me give you an example. All the flexibility and all the whatever vacation time in the world and whatever you decide to throw at this, if the market for personalized CSR account manager for you is $46,000 a year, but you decide you're going to offer $35,000 a year, but you're going to be this super flexible place to work. You have to at least be in the market. You can't just be out of the market and add all these benefits or flexible things that aren't going to cost you, quote, anything. So don't misunderstand that statement of flexibility, flexible work, remote work. vacation, paid time off. But here's the deal. You got to be in the market. Once you're in the market, or let's say you're just a little bit below the market, but you're at a spot where you can afford where you are, then absolutely be the place that is family friendly. Help moms be at the ballpark, be with their kids, help dads not to miss dance or recitals or ball games. Do all of those things that makes that individual more loyal, and not jump for a little bit of pay increase because they're going to have this other opportunity because of the culture that you've built. And I do think that is huge. And that's something that we've learned over the last several years. I learned it by going through it myself. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite. I had daughters that played sports that I was constantly finding myself leaving at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday or a Friday to go to a ball game out of town. We would find ourselves, my wife and I, needing to just leave the office early. And then I had other people that I was seeing that weren't leaving the office early. They were late to the game. And I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right for me to get to do this because I'm, quote, the owner, and my employees don't get to do this because they are, quote, just the employees. That type of mindset is not going to retain people. It's not going to allow you to afford the people, the good people that you want to keep. Because I understand you can't just pay people more and more money. Agencies can't afford to do that. But to Tonya's point, what you can afford to do is you can afford to improve your culture. You can afford to retain people for things other than the pure compensation dollar. The dollar is the dollar. Your profit need, all of that, it's just math. Okay, everybody can do the math and figure that out. The thing that you have to be better at than your competition is what Tonya's talking about. It's the flexibility. It's the being able to do the things and get the vacation time and be able to basically unwind from the busyness that they are in day to day.
I'm going to leave us today with this quote from Tom Brady. Sometimes in life, the biggest challenges end up being the best things that happen to you.
Attitude's a choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
Ready to get the ball rolling with your independent agency? Learn more at IntegraAgent.com. That's IntegraAgent.com. Thank you for joining us on IA Forward. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now, or learn more at IAForward.com.